Really smooth paper isn't usually recommended for colored pencils. I decided to give it a try, and in this video, you're going to find out why I decided to try it and the kind of impacts it can have on your drawings with layering and the techniques that you use. Do you ever wish you could have those really smooth lines with your drawings, but feel like the paper that you use doesn't quite give you that? You have a graininess to it no matter what you do? Normally, I use Bristol vellum paper, and this actually is on the smooth spectrum of papers. But in comparison to ultra smooth plate type of paper, there is a significant difference. Using a really smooth paper can get you some really smooth lines with your drawings. The drawback though is you're really limited on the number of layers that you can do. And if you have any previous experience with colored pencils, then you'll know that the amount of layers you're able to do is really important. Because without layers, you can't get the colors or the details, and more especially, the right values. Because with colored pencils, they are translucent and you have to build up layers to get the right colors and values with your work. And I was just sitting and thinking one day, what would happen if I used really smooth paper? Would it make things too difficult and ruin my drawing? So I decided to cross the deep end and find out if the drawing I decided to use with it was going to end up ruined. So I was honestly a little scared to even give this a try because I didn't want to ruin a drawing. I mean, I was planning on doing a smaller size drawing, so it really wouldn't have ruined everything. So it wouldn't have been like ruining an entire masterpiece or something. So I first cut out this little piece of paper and started drawing a couple of layers on there to see just how the pencil behaved on the paper, because it is a lot smoother than just your typical Bristol vellum. And that was something that was quite apparent to me with just the first impressions of those first layers. Then I added multiple layers to see how the paper would handle those. Then I blended it with odorless mineral spirits to see how it would handle that, because I really wanted to give this little strip of paper the runaround of what I typically do with my drawings before I actually committed to using it, because I'm pretty non-committal when it comes to new things these days. Apart from the blending being easier to accidentally smudge around, I didn't think my little experiment was half bad so far. So then I decided it was game on for commitment. I decided to do a drawing on a 4x6 piece of paper, nothing too huge, but a start. Because of my little experiment on that piece of paper, that did kind of help my decisions I made once I was starting that actual drawing. So because of the fact that it was actually pretty easy to kind of smudge around those pigments of the colored pencil using solvent and a paintbrush, I didn't want to accidentally smear anything where I didn't want it to be, so I just took a very gentle approach to it. I barely touched that paintbrush down to the paper just to get a nice blend to it, but without smearing much around. And that worked out pretty great. Another worry I had with using this paper and darker colors is that I didn't want to end up accidentally burnishing any of my darker colors and being unable to get them as dark as I wanted them to. And then of course, the fear in the back of my mind this whole time was, am I even going to get enough layers? So to help keep that from being a problem with this entire drawing, I just decided to also take a gentle approach with the strokes and the application of the colored pencil to the paper. And that was to just be very gentle with the amount of pressure that I was applying so that I didn't end up accidentally burnishing it. Now, one particular area that I was a little concerned with that might not turn out very well with this drawing in the end was the eyes, because the eyes are the area of the drawing that would require more layers to get the colors and more especially the values right. The fur, it didn't really matter because it's a whole bunch of just stroke layers with only a few minimal layers, like 1 to 2 layers, so maybe sometimes 3 in some places, but lined up on top of each other. So it really wouldn't have impacted the fur like it would the eyes, where it's a lot more heavier styled layers and a lot more layers than the fur would have. But amazingly, that didn't end up being a problem either. And I really think that that boiled down to the fact that I only used about 5 light layers to be able to achieve that color, as well as the proper values for shading. I do have to wonder if that would have turned out as well if I had done something that would have required a lot more heavier layers to get the right colors and the values. Through drawing all of the fur for this lion, it turned out absolutely fantastic. One of the whole reasons why I decided to kind of take this opportunity to draw on ultra smooth paper was because I wanted some of that really great smoothness to those fur strokes and see what I could get in terms of potential detail using an ultra smooth paper versus what I typically use, Bristol vellum, instead. And of course, it did offer me those smoother lines with those fur strokes. So I did like that about it. and there weren't any problems whatsoever in doing those first stroke layers on this paper. So I was able to complete this entire drawing with virtually no issues whatsoever. It really is not what I was expecting at all. I was expecting to have some problems with the eyes and trying to make sure I was able to get enough layers for those to get the color right, and more especially get the values right to have enough shading for them to look real. But this drawing turned out amazing. Where the black is at around the eyes is completely maxed out, and with it being completely maxed out, it's as dark as it needs to be. I don't need to add anything else to it. Now, is this going to be a good paper to use for a lot of different colored pencil drawings? Personally, I don't think so. Now, what is this paper not good for? I would say that this paper is not good for anything that you're going to need more than 2 solid heavy layers, which in my personal opinion, I probably wouldn't draw anything that has longer flowy hair that's going to require a lot of heavy layers to achieve a good color, and then also factor in adding more shading with that as well. And more especially if I was doing any kind of drawings with more of a landscape style or an animal with a background, for instance. There's a lot of different types of subjects going along with that, other than just the animal itself. And a lot of those other subjects, in order to draw trees or rocks or other types of things of nature, you're going to need a paper that's going to give you more layers to be able to achieve those different colors that you need to mix. And I don't think I'd be able to achieve those with this kind of paper. So in essence, I do think that this paper would be a really great choice to use for animals that you are going to be drawing on a closer perspective, a more cropped or bust or face type of picture, where majority of what's going to be drawn on the paper is going to be fur or ultralight layers that aren't really going to be impacted by the limited amount of layers you're going to be able to put on the paper. For the eyes of this lion, I was able to get done about 2 really heavy layers, and I would say half of another one, not quite 3 full layers, like I could on Bristol vellum paper. Would I use this paper at all again though? Yes, I would. I would totally use this paper again for the next lion bust that I draw, maybe even try it on a male lion just to see how the mane goes. Now don't get me wrong, this is a great paper. I think I found a hidden gem in using it for the right types of subjects. However, I still love my Bristol vellum paper, and that will always be my most go-to paper for most of my colored pencil drawings. Ideally, I would not recommend this paper for absolute beginners who have very little experience with colored pencils and layering, because this is going to be a little hard for you to try and draw on and experiment with your layering. If you get your colors wrong, make adjustments and whatnot, you may find yourself running out of layers to be able to achieve what you want. So for beginners, I would very much recommend either Bristol vellum, or more better would be a more medium type of paper like Strathmore colored pencil paper or Arches hot pressed watercolor paper. Click on the video here to learn all about the different paper types for colored pencil drawing and which ones are going to work best for you. And if you want to expand those drawing skills of yours, you can sign up for my real-time tutorials on Patreon. You will learn all kinds of drawing tips and techniques with colored pencil, graphite, and soft pastel. Learn more and sign up by clicking the link on the screen here.